Welcome to this presentation on Dante's Paradiso, the third and last canticle of his Divine Comedy, which he completed 700 years ago. Paradiso is the last word about issues that Dante has been addressing throughout the comedy, especially about needed reforms in the church, in his society, and in the people of his day. In this canticle, guided by his beloved Beatrice, Dante the Pilgrim travels through the spheres of the Ptolemaic universe, learning as he goes about how to achieve the goal of personal and social flourishing, or as it may be called, the life that is truly life. Dante's literal ascent through the ever-expanding spheres signifies that he is becoming increasingly free to choose his true good. As he witnesses various displays of light, his knowledge enjoys more and less intense moments of insight. Beatrice enraptures Dante through the sparkle of her eyes and the ecstasy of her smile. As he encounters courteous and forthcoming souls in each of the spheres, Dante learns to know the truth, to love and to choose what he knows, and to glow with delight in the wisdom of his choice. This is the life of God in Christian terms, God who knows, who is known, and who rejoices in the loving communion of knowing and of being known. Dante learns that love alone is real, that to give and to receive love is the way of living with the very life of God, and that such love has the power to rescue him from the dark wood of aimless and confused wandering, to put him on the via diritta, as he called it, the right path, and in that way, to save him. Each sphere of the Paradiso is dedicated to a specific theme and is populated by souls who appear to Dante the Pilgrim as, you might call it, a visual aid, illustrating the themes of that sphere. The encounters are freely given for his benefit, unlike those surly, often cryptic, self-referential encounters of the Inferno. Life in Paradiso seeks encounter and communion. It is not stuck on self-serving justification or on what is due to oneself alone. Since it is not easy to keep most people interested in unrelenting happiness, Dante the poet varies his narrative with fierce denunciations that provide the last word about abuses on earth that are offensive to heaven. For example, the Emperor Justinian denounces the feuding political factions known as the Guelphs and the Ghibellines, and St. Peter denounces in scathing terms his distant successor and Dante's nemesis, Pope Boniface VIII. Many themes of Paradiso are packed into its first 12 lines. The glory of the one who moves all things, penetrates all the universe, reflecting in one part more and in another less. I have been in his brightest shining heaven and seen such things that no man once returned from there has wit or skill to tell about. For when the intellect draws near its goal and fathoms to the depths of its desire, the memory is powerless to follow. But still, as much of heaven's holy realm as I could store and treasure in my mind shall now become the subject of my song. Like Aristotle, Dante is saying that God is the prime mover of the created world, and like Plato, he is saying that God penetrates it. As the theologians would say, God is both immanent and transcendent. God is being itself, not one being among others, not even the supreme being, as if God could be limited by having a genus or species, or even a spatial location. As mover, God attracts all creation to himself through love. As penetrator, God stamps creation with traces of himself. Above all, forming humanity in God's own image and likeness, which are evident in humans through the godlike qualities of intelligence, free will, conscience, and wisdom. The creatures of the universe are more or less capable, then, of reflecting God, and that is because biology and even the planets mediate the creative act of God, as natural philosophers in Dante's time and people generally believed. That is, the planets were known to affect earthly events like tides, the growth of plants, and the weather. And since this was so, why could they not affect the formation of the embryo and even the course of human events? Thanks to these mediating influences, God's creation then is both one and diverse. It is diverse because it contains so many different people, and it is one because each person has God as the ultimate goal of his or her desire. For Dante, God is the goal of the human intellect, the one who satisfies the human desire to know the truth. The souls in Inferno were described as having lost the good of the intellect, who is God. But the souls in Paradiso enjoy knowing God, in whose light they see, as if in a refracted way, the transcendental goods of truth, justice, and love. Dante admits that it is impossible to communicate the experience of God adequately. He cannot the ineffable. And so, like all good theologians and mystics, Dante knows that the best insights into God must be both affirmed and denied. To show that God cannot be known by the limited powers of the human mind, but only at best by analogy, by saying only that God is like this, not that God has been captured by a concept. The map is not the territory. God talk is necessarily tentative and respectful, not claiming a one-to-one correspondence between any one statement about God and the complete truth of what God is. The images of Paradiso reflect the nature of the place that is only like a place. Varieties of light participate in the one light. This reflects the theme of the one and of the many, of unity and diversity, of solidarity and subsidiarity. This is Dante's vision for society, not just for God, the last word about his political theme. He restates the paradox of out of many, one, in terms of the paradox of God who is one and three. And because it is the paradox of God, unity in diversity is the paradox of life itself. In Paradiso, there is also plenty of music and dance, images of harmony and joy. And unlike the stuck state of Inferno, there is greater spaciousness in each sphere, signifying more life and more freedom, the more one moves into God. In the Circle of the Moon, Dante encounters Piccarda and Constance, as shown in this illustration by Giovanni de Paolo. The two nuns broke their vows by leaving their convents under duress to enter into arranged marriages. Their presence in the moon, which waxes and wanes, signifies their inconstancy despite their best intentions. Dante approaches Piccarda respectfully, with a desire to know all that she can tell him about herself. O well-created soul, who in the rays of endless life enjoy that sweetness which till truly tasted never can be known, how happy it would make me if you were so gracious as to tell me who you are and of your fate. Now, the quality of this encounter, the courtesy and the gentleness of it, is clearly far removed from the often contentious encounters of Inferno. When Picarda explains that she is in the sphere closest to the earth and furthest from the Empyrean where God dwells, Dante plays the tempter with her and asks, "But tell me, all you souls so happy here, do you yearn for a higher post in heaven, to see more, to become more loved by him?" She gently smiled, as did the other shades, and then came her words so full of happiness. She seemed to glow with the first fire of love. "Brother, the virtue of our heavenly love tempers our will and makes us want no more than what we have. We thirst for this alone. If we desired to be higher up, then our desires would not be in accord with his will who assigns us to this sphere. Think carefully what love is, and you will see such discord has no place within these rounds, since to be here is to exist in love. Indeed, the essence of this blessed state is to dwell here within his holy will, so that there is no will but one with his. The order of our rank from height to height throughout this realm is pleasing to the realm, as to that king who wills us to his will. In his will is our peace. It is the sea in which all things are drawn that it itself creates, or which the work of nature makes. Then it was clear to me, says Dante, that everywhere in heaven is paradise, though where the light of grace supreme does not shine equally. Dante has discovered some key conditions of life among the blessed. Each soul is as happy as it is capable of being, and is not envious of others' happiness. Paradiso is a merciful deliverance from the pride, envy, and avarice that so often characterize economic and civic life in Florence, Italy, and the Empire. Desiring or loving what God desires brings peace to the soul. The more that each soul identifies with the source of justice, love, and peace, the more that all souls enter into communion not only with God, but with one another. Picarda, by the way, shows that biology is not destiny. Her brother Corso is in the Inferno, and her brother Forese is in Purgatorio. Clearly, the blessed souls come to Paradiso not by the influences of biology or the stars, but by their own free choices. In the sixth canto of Inferno, Dante focused on how Florence needed reform. In Purgatorio, it was the land of Italy. In Paradiso, Dante focuses now on political reform that is needed in the Holy Roman Empire itself. When he enters the sphere of Mercury, he is greeted by the lovely image of souls gladly welcoming him, smiling among them because he will be food for their love. As in the clear, still water of a pond, the fish are lured towards something fallen in, as if they knew it was their food. So here, I saw more than 1,000 splendors move toward us, and in each one I heard the cry, "Behold, one more who will increase our love." In this sphere, Dante meets the 6th century Emperor Justinian, who is the only soul in all of the comedy to speak uninterrupted for an entire canto. Justinian reviews the history of the Roman Empire and the destiny of Rome. In Dante's political philosophy, Rome should serve as the capital of both political and religious authority. Each power should be separate from the other in function, but united in the purpose of ensuring justice for the common good. The function of the Pope, the Bishop of Rome, is to teach the gospel and the principles of moral and political life, of which justice is the key virtue. The function of the emperor is to ensure that justice be done in specific cases. Once the emperor's authority is established, Justinian denounces the rival parties of Guelphs and Ghibellines, whose partisan strife is tearing up the cities of Italy. The Guelphs opposed the emperor in the name of loyalty to the Pope, and the Ghibellines invoked the emperor's name and authority, but only when it served the purposes of partisan politics. Each party, in truth, ignored both the emperor and the Pope at will, and this canto exposes their hypocrisy and the danger that their strife, their division, is causing to the cities and the regions of Italy. Canto 6 is Dante's prescription for peace in Italy and the Holy Roman Empire. Nothing less than the abandonment of factionalism, divided loyalties, and self-promotion, but instead adopting a wholehearted commitment to justice and the common good. Now, realistically, Dante knows that he is a voice crying in the wilderness, but he also knows that he would be doing less than his duty as a kind of latter-day prophet if he were to say nothing. Besides, he seems to believe that his words are for the sake of people in another, more distant time and place. And at least when it comes to his vision of a united Italy, it can be said that he found his audience in 19th century Italy 500 years after his death. When Beatrice and Dante ascend into the circle of the sun, they are surrounded successfully by two circles of theologians. In the first circle, they encounter Thomas Aquinas, who introduces the theologians who are with him. In the second circle, they encounter Bonaventure, who introduces the members of his cohort. The illustration by Giovanni de Paolo shows Thomas Aquinas, accompanied by his teacher St. Albert, introducing Dante and Beatrice to the first circle. Knowledgeable theologians in Dante's day would have wondered how Suger de Brabant, Thomas's theological rival on earth, should be standing next to him in his circle, and that Bonaventure's rival on earth, Joachim of Fiore, should be standing next to him. And yet, here they are, showing that Paradiso is large enough to contain whole schools of differing theological opinions. Dante is here restating implicitly the paradox of diversity and unity as not only possible, but also as the principle of life in Paradiso. Practicing the courtesies of paradise, Thomas Aquinas, the Dominican, tells the story of St. Francis the Franciscan, while Bonaventure, the Franciscan, tells the story of St. Dominic. The diagram shows the complex relationships between the theologians and the mendicant orders to which they belong. Each theologian, Aquinas and Bonaventure, praises the other's founder, but denounces his own order for degenerating from its founder's vision. Thomas denounces the corruptions of the Dominicans, and Bonaventure denounces the backsliding of the Franciscans. In Purgatorio, Dante had called Francis and Dominic the two wheels of the chariot of the church. Francis's love of Lady Poverty, Dominic's love of truth, exemplify a Christ-like spirit that served as a counterstatement to the scandals of their times, especially avarice and indifference to truth. And so together, Dominic and Francis contributed to the reform of the church. Dante himself learned some key teachings from Aquinas and Bonaventure that seem to have influenced his writing of the comedy. Thomas's great themes, for example, included the hopeful thought that creation is good and that the origin and destiny of humanity is God. Grace builds on a person's nature, influencing each individual for the good, and not creating diverse people as duplicates of one another. Above all, Thomas taught that seeing or knowledge precedes the love of what is seen, as if to say that God is true, not the object of wishful thinking. And the more that God is known and loved, one glows with joy. Bonaventure, on the other hand, emphasized that love itself was the way to knowledge, imparting knowledge as if by osmosis. In his book On the Journey of the Soul into God, which sounds like a paraphrase, really, of the whole journey of the Divine Comedy, the soul comes to God by following the traces of God in creation and the traces of God in the workings of the human mind. For Bonaventure, one cannot know God by reason alone. Love itself is a way of knowing and begets knowledge. No matter which theologian one follows, each has a place in the story, and each has a view that is necessarily limited. And that is why Dante concludes with the need for humility when one is discussing an opinion or making judgments about others based only what is seen on the surface. There are limits in knowing or expressing anything at all. Nor should one be too quick to trust his judgment. Be not like him who walks his field and counts the ears of corn before the time is ripe. For I have seen briar all winter long, showing its tough and prickly stem, and then eventually produce a lovely rose. And I have seen a ship sail through all its course, and then about to enter in the harbor, sink. No Mr. or Ms. Know-it-all should think when they see one man steal and one give alms, that they are seeing them through God's own eyes, for one may yet rise up, the other fall. Ascending to the circle of Mars, Dante meets his ancestor, Cacciaguida, who had been a crusader for the faith, which for Dante was to his credit. The illustration shows Cacciaguida in the circle of light, wearing the crusader's badge and pointing to a scene from Virgil's Aeneid, the reunion of Aeneas with his father Anchises in Elysium. He is emphasizing that Dante's reunion with him echoes the reunion of Aeneas with his ancestor. And just as Aeneas learned about his destiny from his father, Dante will learn about his from Cacciaguida. For 3 cantos, then, Cacciaguida speaks to Dante about his beloved city of Florence, its past, its present, and its future. In the past, Florence was smaller, and its citizens lived a life of idealized simplicity. Cacciaguida would have subscribed to the small is better school of urban development. For the same reason, Cacciaguida denounces the overcrowded and coarser conditions in contemporary Florence, which were introduced by what he calls the new people, the rapid influx of new money over old. To Cacciaguida, gentrification is not entirely a good idea, in part because it creates rapid shifts in long-settled customs, neighborhoods, intergenerational relationships. But most important of all, in these central cantos of Paradiso, Cacciaguida speaks to Dante about his future. He clarifies the meaning of all that Dante has heard about his destiny, especially that the leaders of Florence will soon be sending him into exile. You shall be forced to leave behind those things you love most dearly, and this is the first arrow the bow of your exile will shoot. And you will know how salty is the taste of others' bread, how hard the road that takes you down and up the stairs of others' homes. But what will weigh you down most of all will be the despicable, senseless company whom you shall have to bear in that sad vale. And all ungrateful, all completely mad and vicious, they shall turn on you. But soon their cheeks, not yours, will have to blush for shame. It will be to your honor to have become a party of your own. And then, after that grim prophecy, Cacciaguida commissions Dante to write the comedy, urging him not to hold anything back. Do not resort to lies. Let what you write reveal all you have seen, and let those men who itch scratch where it hurts. Your cry of words will do as does the wind, striking the hardest at the highest peaks, and this will be for honor no small grounds. And so you have been shown here in these spheres, down in the mount, and in the pain-filled valley, only those souls whose names are known to fame. After many more illuminating and joyful encounters, Dante finally reaches the highest point of his journey, the Empyrean, which exists beyond all of the spheres of the universe. All of the saints he has met, and Beatrice herself, live in the heavenly rose, where they enjoy the vision and the love of God in communion with one another. When Dante catches sight of Beatrice, he addresses her for the last time with words of surpassing tenderness and deep gratitude for having saved him from the dark wood and for putting him on the via dritta, the right path, hoping that they will see one another again. From bondage into freedom you led me by all those paths, by using all those means which were within the limits of your power. Preserve in me your great munificence, so that my soul, which you have healed, may be pleasing to you when it slips from the flesh. Then Dante's new guide, St. Bernard, directs Dante's gaze to the Virgin Mary, asks her that Dante be shown the sum of joy, and then steps aside as Dante lets his eyes follow Mary's. The Virgin says nothing, but continues to look deeply into the mystery of God, the eternal light, so that Dante, guided by Mary, has his own one-on-one personal vision of God and of humanity in God. This vision reveals to Dante the wisdom, the power, and the love that together, working in communion as three in one, sum up the goal of human striving, the life that is truly life. In this vision, Dante sees how all of the elements of the created world hold together to a purpose. I saw, he says, the eternal light contains within its depths all things bound in a single book by love, of which creation is the scattered leaves, how substance, accident, and their relations were fused in such a way that what I now describe is but a glimmer of that light. I know I saw the universal form, the fusion of all things, for I can feel, while speaking now, my heart leap up in joy. Like the mystics, Dante sees that all life, all that lives, is held together and finds its home in God, the one eternal light, who shines in circles of three clear colors bound in one same space. This is Dante's description of the Christian mystery of God as three persons in one Godhead. And that light is also love, love united with wisdom and power. But what finally leaves Dante completely astonished is that one of those circles seemed in itself and in its own self-color to be depicted with man's very image. Dante sees the human face, the face of Christ, inseparably inscribed with the same colors that belong to God's own self. In other words, humanity can never be separated from the source of its bliss. Humanity can deny the connection and live in an inferno of its own making. But in Christ, humanity is one with God, in communion with God, and can find its way home to God, as Dante did, by turning his back on the inferno, by repenting and climbing the mountain, and strengthening the wings of his desire for flying upward. That is, by choosing with reason and with will what is true and just and good. Dante the exile, the once embittered outcast, is astonished to recognize that no matter where he is, he can always be home through love. Humanity is always inseparable from the source of its bliss. One has only to know and to choose God's wisdom, power, and love in order to have joy. That is why Dante ends his poem by recording his ecstatic response to his vision, his sense that he has achieved communion with eternal life and with all creation. At this point, power failed high fantasy, but like a wheel in perfect balance turning, I felt my will and my desire impelled by the love that moves the sun and the other stars. Throughout the Paradiso, Dante says that he cannot find the words to describe what he saw and experienced. He tried his best, but his high fantasy failed him. As we conclude this series of talks on the Divine Comedy, I admit to the same defeat. In the company of many commentators who have meditated on Dante's text for 700 years. Thank you for joining me as we followed in the footsteps of Dante in his journey from bondage into freedom, and as we gained from him, I hope, light and inspiration for what he called the journey of our lives.